As of 2024, 70% of all commerce now happens on our mobile phones, which means it is a non-negotiable. We can't skip over it. It can't be a second thought. And this video is going to show us how. So let's be honest, the struggle is real, right? We spend all this time making our desktop versions look absolutely beautiful. And then it turns out the majority of our traffic is going onto our mobile. And what happens at a lot of agencies is we focus on making this design of the desktop look amazing, and then we just scale it down to look good or think it looks good on mobile. And yes, it might aesthetically look good, but we're not really considering what is best for the user and how they navigate it and what's different. So in this video, we're going to cover the core functionality and differences that you need to consider when designing and building for mobile. We're going to cover overall approach and how people navigate and work with those sites differently. And also we're going to give you a couple of tips and tricks that are going to make the life of the mobile user so much easier. So hopefully it's going to be really, really valuable. Moreover, we're also going to have 2 pro examples about great mobile design and then 2 not so good examples that we're probably going to go through as well. So hopefully really good educational video. So let's get into it. So we're going to start at the top, the nice easy point, right? We're no longer designing for one of these. We're not designing for a mouse anymore. We're not working with a cursor. Now that might seem really obvious, but what we want to do straight away is we want to consider how is this going to be used? And it's my thumb and how it navigates around. And straight away, if you can imagine me holding my thumb like this, on here, you'll see that straight away there's a general clear position of where my hand should be moving or where my thumb is moving. Now there's a reason why Apple did a big thing and it moved its address bar from the top of its Safari to the bottom, because it's just so much easier for our thumb to get to. So everything that we're going to be doing really needs to consider that as the forefront of what we're going through. There's also obviously the difference now that we're not clicking. We can't interact with things in quite the same way as what a cursor would do. So instead we're now swiping, we have gestures, we have movements that we can do with our thumb that aren't natural on a cursor but become very natural on this basis. And this comes back to the point of what I was saying at the start of the video is let's not just take our desktop designs and make it smaller. Let's make sure we're really considering and redesigning the mobile experience to be great for the thumb. And I thought a great place to start is just giving you an example of how a site is doing this particularly well. So you'll see here now that I'm going to be just sharing Thursday boots with you. We're on an individual category page. We're looking at some lace-up boots. So they have a nice opening category image. On the desktop version anyway, you've got these other filters down the hand side. And then I can see the captain and I can click into here and I can hover over here and indeed see the different colored boots. Works really, really nicely. And as I scroll down, we have the different styles of boots that I can then look at. It's a really, really nice way of doing it, and it's really set out for my cursor. Now let's take the mobile experience. And what you'll see is different on here is, and you can hopefully sort of see like my pretend thumb that's now appeared. But you'll see here we've now got the captain style boots that is on here. We have a nice opening shot, which isn't clickable, but I can kind of see an indication of what it might look like, and then I can scroll through. And what's really nice about this version is now all of a sudden the different colors are all on show to me. So I can cycle through these, I can swipe through, so it's really nice from a gesturing point of view, and all of these work individually, so I can swipe through them. It just feels like it's really well thought through from a user's perspective of how I'm going to be using my thumb. And that's kind of one of the big differences of what I would say is a really nice visual example of that desktop to mobile version, and making sure we're considering that. Now we're going to take a little bit of pause there. I'm going to get a little bit geeky for a second, but this is because Google has a version of its design systems that it releases to the general public to be able to use, and it's called Google Material. And Google Material has lots of really valuable content about how Google designs, but therefore also what Google considers important. And since Google's the biggest search engine in the world, it makes sense that we should be looking at the way that they design and what their rules are when it comes to mobile responsiveness and trying to take some of that into account. So the screen I'm just going to quickly show is from their material design base, and it's pointing out what is referred to as pointer targets. So basically your thumb or your finger, right? And you want to take into account an overall individual sizing that we want to have on there. And the general rule of thumb of what you're seeing here is it's referencing a little bit further up. It will say 48 by 48 dots per inch is what it's referencing. Now that is obviously great from a design perspective. What does that mean to a user, not a normal person? It means you'll see here, we've got a physical sizing of around 9 mil is the sizings that those buttons should be as a very minimum. Anything smaller than that target, as it's referencing them, is it's going to be too hard to click on. And the concern is that if the user can't easily click on something, or worse, has too many buttons close together they can't interact with, they end up clicking onto the wrong thing and then we lose them. So this is a really key takeaway that I would just reference, is making sure we're really considering the target size if we're looking from a mobile point of view. And that's not just down to the overall size of the button, that is the padding, that is the spacing around it as well. That's why making sure there's nothing too cluttered is going to be really, really key for a great mobile experience. I'm not going to spend too much longer on this. I might do a whole video about this. So actually, if you would like me to break this down in more detail and talk about Google material in more detail, please let me know in the comments and I'll definitely do one of those. Now next, I have spoken about navigation a lot in some of my other videos, but I'm just going to quickly overview a couple of things that I always like to reference. There's three main ways that people buy. There is the page that they land on and they just scroll down based on that and they navigate based on what they can interact with. That is point one. Point two is that they'll go straight for the menu system, the most traditional way, and then they'll click around there. But again, it's not necessarily the most popular option when it comes to mobile. The most popular option on mobile is normally using the search facility. And that's what I want to focus on next, because there's a couple of key tips and tricks that I can give you that's going to really help that mobile experience and therefore drive up those conversion rates. Now we've got B&Q loaded up here, and you'll see as an example with the word test, I put the word tester in. And what is now referencing in here is as I start to type something in, it's obviously giving me some options. So that is really useful. It's starting to guess what it might be. It's trying to make the life of the user easier. And I don't see this as a bad thing. This is very much a good thing. I just think it could be massively improved. And what you'll see from this point of view is, as I'm looking through all these individual examples, it doesn't really give me any indication of how big that end goal is going to be. How many options am I going to be given by this? Because if it's going to be too large, does it make sense to pick one of the further down options as an example? So having this number of options without any indication on it is a bit of a tricky issue that I would say let's avoid if we can. I'm going to flick across and show you a site that's doing it particularly nicely. Now I realize as I've loaded this one up that I say Adidas and some people say Adidas, so apologies if I'm offending anyone. But Adidas, they have a really nice option that you put in here. So if I go on search, and again this works on mobile, I've just got it loaded on desktop just for ease of this video. But if I start to type in, if I start to type in hoodie, there's a couple of things that happen here. First off, it's obviously showing me some potential products that might be really useful to me. But the other one it then references to say, if I just want to look at hoodies, there's 486 search results for that. If I want to look at men's hoodies, there's only 263. If I'm after a zip. And what's really nice is you'll see as I go down, there's these lower filter options. So it's really nice. So rather than me having to look at hoodies and then cycle through 500 different versions, I can go, actually, yeah, I'm actually after a zipped hoodie. So I only have to look at 150 of them now. Oh, what would happen if I type in black hoodie? What would happen if I type in this? Like, you'll start to see all of these individual options where the user's getting genuinely useful data from just typing into the search box rather than having to click, go through, see the results, see what they're working with, and then make edits from there. So that's a really big, important tip. I know I've shown you on the desktop, but this does work on the mobile as well. Please take that categorization into account. It's really, really key. While we're on the topic of trying to make the life of the mobile user easier, you also got one big advantage that happens on mobile use, and that is that the keyboard layout can be chosen based on the field box that gets inserted. So in this example that I've got loaded here, as I've clicked into card number, I don't have to show the whole navigation anymore. I can just show the individual key buttons, so therefore the numbers that the user would type in here. You can do the same on phone numbers, on security. You can even change some of the options that get shown on the main keyboard. So if someone's typing in an email address, there's an email keyboard that you can show. And these can be coded in to make sure you're pulling in the relevant one. And it's something that often gets overlooked. I'm sure we've all been on websites where it's asked for our phone number or something along those lines, and it's giving you the whole keyboard. And you sat there thinking, why is it giving me all these options? And it's those small differences that can make a difference that someone might just leave. So we want to make sure that every single conversion that pushes through, right? So it's a really nice, easy one to take into account. Another one on this subject is also autocorrect. So one thing to take into account is obviously your mobile autocorrect can be really, really useful, but it's not useful for absolutely everything. And you do have the ability as a developer to turn that off. So if someone is typing in their password or typing in their username, please turn off the autocomplete options, because it might change what they're typing in. So if you're starting to type in your user account, you're trying to put a number in it or purposely adding an additional letter, and autocomplete keeps changing it to the correct spelling of it, it can be really, really frustrating. And it's not going to affect every single user, but if we can just reduce those kind of issues down for most of your users, it's going to make a big difference as well. So please take that one into account too. Okay guys, we're on the home stretch. We are now moving on to examples, and I'm going to start with this example, which I'm not going to lie to you, I personally think is pretty awful. I feel bad. Obviously big established company, possibly been overly negative there, but I'm just going to run through some basic things. So we're on the home page here, right? We've got a big massive option at the top here. We've then got the logo taking up space. We've then got the search. We've then got the ability to choose my location or my deliver to. I've then got some recommendations. I've then got a 60%, and then I've got this really unusual, I guess, like offers tab where there's just too much information. There's too much data in here. It's so cramped. Everything is so busy. I don't really know what to even interact with. We've got issues around having too much data on here in the first place. Everything is too cramped. There's not enough negative space around everything to breathe. And it's also really confusing for the user of where I should even start. And that's because the overall color theory that we're going on here is a little bit off. So in theory, do we want to push people to the search? But actually this up to 60% off is what's really grabbing my major attention. And then I've got this really weird section here. And even this is fairly traditional, right, from a sliding option. And actually, if I just see, if this was my starting one, and then I moved across, these are okay. Again, I would say the amount of text that is in here is too much and too tight, but you know, some of them are okay. It's this initial one that feels really, really messy and overly cluttered, and it's probably really off-putting to the user. I then have this get up to $5 off £50, which is fine. I don't feel that's relevant at this precise moment in time, and it should be out of the way. And the whole thing just feels incredibly cluttered and messy, in all honesty. Let's just have a quick look now together as I get further in. So from a real estate point of view, right, like I'm using again a lot of space, like probably about a fifth of my page every time I load it up is taken up with all of these menu navigation options before I even get into it. Oh, and it gets even bigger when it offers me the app as well. Brilliant. I don't have to cycle all the way down just to get to the individual appliances. Now you'll see here that I've then got 674 of them, and I've got these filters that I then have to go to. Filters are okay, and I can kind of click through and I get to at least see the numbers that's going to be on here, so at least hopefully I can drill those down. But there's no tick boxes on them, so I can't tick a few of them on to filter it down. I have to click into each one individually, and it takes ages to load everything in as well. It's quite painful from a point of view. So there's a lot of kind of major issues on this, and a lot of this just comes down to those kind of problems. Even now it's jumping around, it can't quite decide, it's still individually loading elements in. Now this other one, again, I'm possibly being a little bit mean. We're having a look at some options here. American Eagle, really well-known brand, right? From a mobile perspective, there's a lot going on here. So straight away we've got this accessibility bar that's right at the top of the page. I then have the ability at all times, it would appear, whatever page I'm on, is to always be able to change tab between the brands. I feel like that's really not important to me. I feel like offer me that once, but don't do it on every single page, because I am now looking at your brand. I don't need a relevance to go look at that. Really, the site should be starting around here. And even that, right, is taking up a lot of real estate. But if you think with all of these options here, like 50% of my entire page when I load this up, bearing in mind I'm on an internal category page just asking to look at the jeans that they offer, it's taken up with all of this bump that I don't really need here. So it's not until we get to about here where we can have maybe those kind of pulled in, those breadcrumbs pulled in, that I then get into this information. And again, I feel like there's some weird, unusual choices that are happening here. So I know they've got this individual bar that gets pulled in with these icons, but everything feels a little bit too tight. Nothing particularly feels like I can necessarily interact with it. You have these sort of additional elements get pulled in, but then we have big white gaps because they've obviously not been well thought out from a design perspective. And then I continue down, and even just these white bars that cut off makes everything feel disjointed and uneven in its style. Some of the photography is okay at the top, so these sort of shots where we get everyone, but we seem to zoom in, zoom out. It varies quite heavily. Let's see what happens when I click that. Nothing particularly exciting. Also, just, you know, if this comes in a different color, I can't see those different colors from this page. I can't even add to cart from this page. I can't pick a size. I'm going to have to click into every individual product to look at it in detail. Even if I've already found the thing that I'm after, I'm going to have to click into it to try and buy it. Takes a little bit of time to load. Again, I've got all of this real estate at the top, whereas really I should be probably loading in like here, and then I can see the imagery. It seems to want to really push the fact that this has been sold, whereas for me, let's just say as an example, how do I buy this product? I want to buy this, right? Okay, So I'm going to cycle down, and it comes in a color. There's the pricing. I'm looking for like a buy button. Now, I know it's this because I've obviously researched it beforehand. But I even find this language really unusual, right? Get it before it's gone. Like, when have you ever seen that in another e-commerce store? It feels so random that, to be honest, to start with, I just scrolled past it and I looked for something else. It then says at the bottom here, get it before it's gone, with a little cart image. Like, I don't know if they're QA testing that at the moment, or they've run some form of test and that's proven to be more successful, and maybe it is, but it feels really, really unusual to me and feels a little bit out of place. And the fact that the first thing that is happening here is this last sold 60 minutes, and that's what's sticky, feels really random. I feel like the buy button should be that for me. That's what the user should be pushing me to. The other thing is, if I click that, this at least does load up and just give me some sizing, so I don't have to have select the sizing beforehand. So a little bit better overall, and it pulls that information in, but in all honesty, not a great user journey. So now let's look at two examples that are doing it really well. So we're now on IKEA. We are on a fabric sofa page is what I've gone to. I've gone to an individual category page, and then what you'll see is straight here, I just can cycle through these different filters that are on here, which is quite nice. And as I mentioned on the last one, which we were missing, is I can change the color there and then. I can add to cart straight from this page. I can favorite it, or I can click pretty much anywhere else on this tab, and I can immediately buy it as well. And immediately then check out the product page. So I've got multiple options here. I can see if I like the color, and I can carry on down and cycle through them. And that's the big difference, I would just say straight away, is like there's consideration of what's important to a mobile user at this point, which the American Eagle just didn't have right. It just didn't think it through. Even from a white space, these are actually quite large, with giving the user a lot of space to kind of read all this information, right? And it feels so much easier to digest compared to that Lowe's one, that everything was really, really cramped and hard to read, and it felt overly busy, and therefore it felt cheap. You just don't get that feel with this one, and that's why it works so much nicer. So we're now into the individual product, and you can kind of see an option on here. We can see some pricing, nice little things like 10-year guarantee, medium size, nice option, add to shopping bag. It's a lot clearer. The contrast levels are really good. Everything is more spaced out. It works really, really well. Now, if you are enjoying these videos and you want me to do a more thorough breakdown into one of the individual elements that I've spoken about in this video, please give me a comment below and I'll happily do that. Okay guys, the last one that I want to run you through is Nordstorm. So I'm into an individual page, which is the Workout Essentials. Nice little additional menu at the top of the page for me. So I've gone into Workout Essentials, and I can drill down even further with these particular options. I quite like that as an idea. And again, kind of looking through from this point of view, I've got these options to change the overall color here and there. So I get to actually look at those if I like them, and I can go straight into the individual product, or I can add to my cart straight from this plus button. They do have a little bit of extra spacing for these kind of red information to show you if it's on sale. I think probably a little bit more information could be done with that white padding there. But the other thing is that we've got enough room to have both of them next to each other, showcase the imagery, consistent style of imagery as well, which I really like. And it's just a nice, easy site to interact with compared to some of the other ones that we've seen. If we go into the individual product page, I've got this nice gallery, which is nice and easy to swipe across. You know, classic little bit of design, right? Just show that there's enough on there where the thumb can just swipe across. And I've got these options straight here, add to bag, nice and easy for me to interact with, really clear. And you can just see the difference in language and how much easier that is to understand. Even just having it slightly wider, slightly chunkier adds a little bit of contrast. And because the site is so pared back in its color options, it just makes this stand out so much better, which is really, really nice. You then have this option to choose the site. So actually what we saw in the other one, and maybe this is something that should be included here, is if I do hit add to bag, just pop open the menu option there and then for me to then buy from. That could work really, really nicely. But the overall site feels so much better, especially on that category page that I was referencing before. I'm going to leave you guys with a little fact. If you do optimize your e-commerce experience separately from your desktop, it's been proven to show that you should get just over a 30% increase in conversions when you really consider that mobile use and a lot more. And my last little tip to end the video is make sure that the e-commerce experience is fast to load. It's been shown that 53% of users will leave the page if it takes more than 3 seconds to load. So you've only got a small finite window to get them across the line. And even some of these tricks and tips that I've given you today, even if you just put a few of those in and we can bump up that percentage slightly, you're going to overall see that as we start to compound those up. And that's it, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the video. We'll keep it short and sweet. See you next week. Bye.